So we have significantly advanced this session, as you would have known, and this was supposed to be like a few minutes later. But when it comes to the infrastructure sector, advancing pre-commissioning, that's not really always the norm. But anyway, what a pleasant surprise, ladies and gentlemen, it is for me to talk to you, all of you today. And with a personality like Mr. Praveer. A very well-known name in the Indian infrastructure space, particularly in the larger energy space, and needs no introduction, of course. So, first of all, a very warm welcome to you on our platform, sir.
Thank you, Sudhir. Always a pleasure, and thank you, BS, for the opportunity.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure to host you. Let me begin this conversation by trying to understand from you. There's what's your larger vision of infrastructure, very broadly speaking? We're talking about Viksit Bharat of 2047. So when you visualize Viksit Bharat of 2047, what is the kind of infrastructure growth that you see happening over this period? And particularly in that year, what kind of infrastructure do you see would be there from its size point of view, or from the technology involved point of view, or maybe from the different segments that are there, and with a specific focus on the green energy powered infrastructure?
So, talking about infrastructure, I think India is a growing country. It's an aspirational country. And in any area that we see, our per capita consumption is one of the lowest. We look at steel, we look at power, we look at water, we look at any sector. And that's where I think we have a unique opportunity in time that for next 10, 20 years, we will continue to be the fastest growing and the largest growing in terms of the GDP. And we will be in a position to only improve it if we do little more work. We today have 6 to 7% GDP growth. I think we have capability to do it 8 to 10% and not be satisfied with the 6 to 7% growth. We need more airports, we need better roads, we need better transportation. We don't have great public transport system, whether it is the bus transport or it is the metro rails. And we need better railway infrastructure. We don't have the type of bullet trains that you have in very many other countries. And I do not see any reason why we cannot have that. We do not have great access of energy. And I always talk about that universal access of energy and energy poverty is one of the biggest challenges. And we still have large number of villages which get power but need not. And I remember many years back I used to say that 24/7 has different meanings to different people. Over here we talk of 24/7 in one day. In power supply in many parts of the country, not now, but few years back used to be that you supply 24 hours in 7 days, not in one day. So that typically used to be the way the power system used to work. But we still have an issue. We have, in our country, we have something like 90,000 megawatt, 90 gigawatt of diesel power. And I think that's a waste. There's no reason why we should have diesel power. We have so much of agriculture that is happening using DG sets because the farmers do not get the power supply when they want. They get it when the DISCOM supplies, and the DISCOM is not interested in supplying because for every unit they supply, they lose money. And we do a lot of work in rural areas. I do a lot of work actually in UP and Bihar and small villages. These are not very far off from Lucknow and Patna, the state capital, but when you go over there, you will find that there is no supply. Because when we talk of supply, the supply is home supply, the residential supply. It's not there for commercial activities. So I think there is so much more that we can do for infrastructure. And whatever we do will be too little. So I don't think there is ever an opportunity for us to pat our back and say that we've done enough and we've met everyone's requirement and we are so satisfied. We are not there. We need to do much, much, much more.
No, no, I completely agree with you on that, sir, because so in a lot of ways, it's a very interesting story that is unfolding in India, particularly in areas like electricity that you mentioned, right? So we have the characteristics of a third world country also, right? There is this diesel, DG gensets are there. There is still very high, relatively very high AT&C loss level at the national level, right? It has come down, no doubt about it. But then at the national level, we continue to have high losses. Uh, and the third point about also, the universalization of energy access. While a lot has been done, a lot of progress has been made, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there. Particularly in the rural areas, right? It's one thing to say that we have 23-hour, supply, but then it's the quality also that matters. And particularly for sensitive industries or farmland, that's a lot of, that factor can make a lot of difference. But anyway, it's also a fact that, so that's why I said it's a very interesting story, because while we have on one hand all of these things, we also have in today's paper, there's an article which says that, over the next few months, we are going to have 25,000 crore worth of IPO money getting into the system in renewables. Now imagine that's a huge, rainbow of possibilities over the next many decades. But let me try and ask you more specifically. You've touched about in the initial comment. You touched upon a lot of things. If I were to ask you to take a pause and look back at the way we have developed, right, the infrastructure industry over the last, let's say, a decade or so, what are the top two things that you think we have done absolutely fantastically, and we are absolutely proud of having done that? When you ask the common man walking on the road these days, they say roads is a huge success story. But what's your view? And secondly, what are the two things where you would say, we could have perhaps done better? There's a missed bus there. We missed an opportunity to create something world class or something which could have been more sustainable. How would you respond to that?
So I know only power sector. So let me stick to power sector. So turn of the century, 2000, India had an installed capacity of about 100 gigawatt. 2010, one decade, we became about 200 gigawatt. Another 10 years, decade, we became something like little less than 400. Today we are 490 gigawatt. And our aspiration is to have 500 gigawatt of clean energy by 2030. And our total will be about 750 gigawatt. So that's the type of numbers that we are looking at. Also, when we look at that, we were very small in clean energy. Today, 50% of our 480, 490 gigawatt is clean energy. So that's a huge improvement. We look at solar. 2015, we were 5 gigawatt. Today, we are 115 gigawatt. And we have aspiration to become 290 gigawatt by 2030. We typically, in the last decade, 2010 to 2020, we would typically add 5 gigawatt every year. In last few years, we started adding about 10 to 12 gigawatt. Last year, we added 30 gigawatt. So we've done much better. But let's look at, and we all have a very big habit of comparing ourselves with other countries. So I also sometimes get into that habit. And let me compare with what China. So last year in India, we added 30 gigawatt of renewable capacity. China did 400 gigawatt. In this year, in first 6 months, out of 400 gigawatt, there was some 280 gigawatt of solar. And this year, in first 6 months, China added 212 gigawatt. So that's the type of capacity add that is happening. That's the type of change and transformation. We are talking of that we have 490 gigawatt. they are talking of they are 2,500 gigawatt of energy. So I think, and in terms of population, we are virtually the same. I think we have overtaken 1.44 billion around. I think we have overtaken. So there is no reason why we should not, if those people can. And leave alone those countries, even smaller countries in South Asia, you go to Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia. Smaller countries have also done exceedingly well in terms of per capita power consumption. In India, we are about 1,400 units of power consumption on a yearly basis. In villages, it is 100 units. 100 units divided by 12 means that we consume something like 8-9 units per month. It is pittance. What will you do with 8-9? Maybe 2 bulb, LED bulb, 1 fan and 1 mobile charger. That's not what we expect. Nearly 40% of our population which stays in villages. So I think there is so much of things that we need to do, and there is so much of opportunity. And I always tell everyone that this is the golden period for the country. Next 10 years, 20 years, whatever we will do in this country will be too little, too less. So we need to work more, we need to do more, and we need to bring speed and agility. So this is a time where people have to do more things. I see Christoph over here. More airports. Why just one Noida airport? He's doing a fantastic work, and hopefully in next 2 months it will get started and you can use the Noida airport. And one of the best state-of-the-art airport you will see. But there is so many more airports that can come, and we need that. It should not be that the condition of the airport becomes so bad that then you start looking for place to expand and all that. There should not be. I always used to say that we had airports where you need not put where the toilets are. You could smell your way to the toilet. We don't need that sort of airports. We need much better. And I think there is so much more that we can do in our country.
You avoided the second part of the question, which was 2 areas where you think we could have done better.
Every area we can do better. I don't think, I'm telling you, there is no need to pat our back on anything. Whatever we have done is good, but it's not the best. And we have a huge road ahead of us to do huge improvements in every area. We've done good roads, but there's so much more that we need to do. We've done good airports, we've done many more ports have been added, but it's so inadequate. Everywhere you go, you find that there is a choke and there is a waiting period. It is not that you are able to transport your material very quickly and all that. And that's true for everything, whether road transport, rail transport, or the ship transport.
Talking about doing the right thing, and I'll say this very quickly, one of the things that very frequently comes up when I talk to the CEOs of these, Chinese companies, and there was a Chinese reference to your comment, in renewable energy space, the most important thing they tell me, and I'm sure to a lot of people, is that, what makes us really different and better perhaps is because the pace at which we are doing our R&D. And that's specifically important for a sector like solar or RE broadly, because it's changing very fast, right? It's changing very fast. Like within 6 months, or sometimes within a 6 months to a year kind of time frame, something new has come up, right? So if you're a white elephant, you would probably continue to miss a lot of buzz. That's just one of the things that, from a perspective point of view, I wanted to share. But I agree on the point that you mentioned about the pace of capacity creation. For example, when I started working, which was slightly more than 1.5 decades back, we used to be so happy saying that 20,000 megawatt of capacity has been created in 1 year. Wow, thermal capacity, right? Today, we have last year, 25,000 megawatt of solar itself, if I'm not wrong. So it's a huge movement forward. But coming to the point, one of the things that's always identified as a constraint is capital, right, for infrastructure. I want to ask you, very broadly speaking, how difficult in today's times it is for large corporates like Tata Power, for example, to access capital? And when we are talking about the larger Viksit Bharat vision, let's say over the next 2 decades or so, infrastructure creation, what is broadly the kind of funding requirement that we have, and how comfortable we are there?
So the power sector itself requires more than 3 trillion in next 5 years. So that's the type, and this is right through in generation, transmission. 5 lakh kilometers of transmission lines have to be done. So it's a huge amount of investment. Similarly in distribution. So I think there is a huge amount of capital that is required, and that capital has to be through multiple sources. There is no one solution that is there. Today we have, of course, the Indian banks, which are very, very liquid and have ability to fund projects, and we are fortunate to get that funding. But there are a whole lot of multilateral funding, international funding that needs to come. Long-term funding has to come, and also the cost of funding. Today, India's cost of funding is one of the highest in the world, and we are not able to get the type of funding that we are looking at to make the projects viable. Most of the places internationally, you get money at 2 to 3%. We get at in double digit. It's very rare that in some cases we end up getting in single digit. So I think there is a huge amount of funding, and we have also a lot of restrictions, like insurance companies cannot do funding, cannot do equity holding, cannot do financing, as is being done. You have now the Canadians and the ones from Europe and UK and other places who come and do funding over here. But our funding, our insurance companies are not allowed to do, and they are sitting on huge pile of cash with them. So I think there is a necessity to also open up some of the channels which have been very restrictive. Look at long-term financing. Most of the projects that we do are 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Why can't we have a 30 or 35 year? Recently I was doing a hydro project which has a 35-year life. And I don't see any reason why I should not get a 30 years or a 35 years, but the door-to-door in India maximum is about 20 years. So I think it's very important that we open, because the cost of funding, the cost of capital, all those things are becoming some sort of a challenge, especially when we are looking at the type of growth that we are looking in the country. And I do know, fortunately in Tata Power, I don't face that problem, but I do know that many companies have that sort of a challenge. Many small and medium industries have that sort of a challenge. And how do we bring access of this funding much simpler and at a much competitive rate for them to survive?
Okay. The last thing that I want to ask you is, of course, again, a very important factor, which is policy and regulatory landscape. The key there is to, when the moment we start looking at policy and regulatory landscape, the kind that is required for long-term sustainable. Sorry for that. Long-term sustainable kind of infrastructure creation. The key is to be able to understand that it's very important to act before time, right? Once you miss the time when a particular regulatory or a policy intervention is to be done, you can't take corrective steps, let's say 2 years later. There is a time to do that. Now, and then there are many other factors like that. I want to understand from you, as somebody, as a leader of the industry who has seen different areas within the infrastructure space growing over time, and you have a very good understanding of how the India's policy and regulatory landscape works. Do you think we are sowing the right seeds today of being, to be able to create the kind of sustainable growth at scale in the infrastructure space, and specifically from a green infra creation point of view?
So let me come on the policy part of it and the legal framework around that. Now, we have a federal structure, while we have the union government which decides, makes the law. The implementation of it in most of the cases, especially in power, I see that it's a concurrent subject. And it's the states who take the call. So whether it is on land or it is on forest or it is on any other issue which is relating to the people, it is the states who take a call on what needs to be done locally. Now, 28 states, 9 union territories, everyone has a different agenda. Everyone has a different plan. And it is very, very difficult to get everyone to come on a common platform and decide that this is what is good for the country, this is what is good for the people, this is what we should do for the state. And it's a Herculean task, and that is why you find that the speed at which the projects are happening are very, very slow. You don't get land, you don't get ROW, you don't get statutory clearances, forest clearances, administrative. So recently a report came that to set up a solar plant in India, you require something like 2,700 approvals and clearances. So I don't know, Christoph, how many clearances and approvals you, but that's 2,700. I run an industry where it is in generation, transmission, distribution. I am told, because there is a software which now monitors it, there are 80,000 applications, approvals, and things that we need to get approval. So that's the type of nature of, and how do we decomplex it? How do we make it simpler? How do we make it simpler for people to implement it? And that's why we are not having things moving at a very fast pace. We have systems of regulatory panels are there, appellate tribunals are there. I was told that cases in appellate tribunal in power are pending since 2013. We are in 2025. And these are having huge commercial impact. And if there is a commercial impact, it also flows to the consumers because they end up paying for that, and it gets added to their tariff. So I think there is a huge necessity to de-bottleneck some of these things. We cannot have an economy which is flourishing and growing at a fast pace with the legislature and the regulatory framework not supporting it. In fact, last evening, from CII side, we were hosting the parliamentary panel on power, and there were some nearly 20 of the member of parliaments, and we were sharing with them that what are the challenges that we are facing and how our growth today is stuck up, and how you need to open up this so that we look at double-digit growth and not in single-digit growth. So I think there is so much more that needs to be done. The speed at which the legislations have to come, the speed at which the enforcement of those legislation have to happen. One great example that we have is a common GST council. Possibly you need a similar council for land, for clearances, for power, for water, and then only we will be able to see the really great speed at which we can transform and make a difference in the country.
What was the broad consensus achieved in that parliamentary panel meeting that you're talking about? When you shared all these issues with them, was there a way forward towards how to sort things out?
There was, that we'll meet again and discuss.
There's so much that I want to talk to you about, and particularly on that very interesting topic of delays. There is a very famous joke that the MOSPI comes out with this cost and time overrun report in infrastructure projects. There's a long list of projects in railways dating back to they received their approvals in 1980s. There is a project approved in 1980 in this country and still facing cost overrun anyway. So, and we can go on and on about it, but time is short, and Vinu is, I'm sure you're not happy about it. But it was nice talking to you, Mr. Sinha, and really thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing those great perspectives with us. Thanks for sharing all that information, and we really look forward to hosting you again on this platform. Thank you. Thanks.
Want access to Business Standards premium insights? Join our exclusive LinkedIn communities and connect with top voices in the BFSI space on topics that matter to you.